Tuesday's coming. Did you bring your coat?
I live in a giant bucket.
Welcome, everybody. That is a line of dialogue from one of 3 shorts created by Don Hertzfeldt. I am your host, Sinister Boy.
Hello, I'm another host, a geeky writer.
I'm a semi-host, Crimson Maroon.
And I'm Sprinks, the 4th host.
Do we have any socials we want to read out? Are we social?
Yeah. I think, yeah. Thank you for listening wherever you're listening from. We are Cheap Seat Critics Podcast over on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, as well as youtube.com/@CheapSeatCritics. That's where we have our visual side of things, as well as our new form of visual side over at Rumble as well at Cheap Seat Critics. However, on Twitter, the ending is CRITIX. So Cheap Seat Critics that way. That'll be the Twitter. And we're also over at LetterBox if you're interested in that as well.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So just to preface, covering 3 shorts each this season. Yeah, I can say that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's
Just
fair
not the
enough.
We had a draft last week.
Okay. Covering 3 shorts each this season. I'm going first. I can say that too, right?
Yes.
Yes, I think this is coming out first, Sinister, yes.
Well,
He's allowed
I'm
to
just
say his
saying-
name's Sinister, right?
I don't remember the draft if we gave the order of who's going in what order.
No, the draft
Well,
was...
I was
we said that was
I was more asking just in case, God forbid, something happens scheduling wise that this doesn't become a whole thing.
In theory,
you're good.
this is going first.
Okay.
Yeah.
In theory, this is first. If not, sorry you're hearing this twice. Then,
Season 12, Episode 2.
or 3 times. My 3 picks are all 3 by the animator known as Don Hertzfeldt. Starting with Billy's Balloon, second Rejected, and third and final Meaning of Life. We are beginning with Billy's Balloon, and I'm just going to give a quick little summary of information behind the short, and then we'll jump into discussing the ins and outs and ends and in-betweens and beginnings and middles. Yeah, our histories. Actually, no, we'll do histories first. Hold on. Let me put on my Johnny Carson impression here. Nothing at all. All right, go.
Is this between all 3 or just the Billy's Balloon?
All 3.
All right.
Actually, let's just do Billy's Balloon. Anybody have any experience with Billy's Balloon before today?
I have heard of it, never watched it.
Okay, more than I expected.
Nothing.
All right,
In terms
Spring.
of technicality, before today, I did watch Billy's Balloon.
Okay.
Before that time for the podcast, no.
Always a stickler for the specifics. I have seen this like 10, 15 times now. In a lot. It was not the first one I watched, though, obviously. All right. I don't want to... I got to front load here, so I gotta
Yeah,
keep
you're
it
first
pretty
to go.
brief.
I mean, are we all
We're doing Rejected
strictly
next?
Billy's first, and then we'll move on, or
Let's do individually just for the sake of it. We might throw it out later on. I don't know. I was gonna do all 3, but in one go. But I figured let's keep these separate. If we want to do some short form content later, it might be helpful.
Good idea.
I agree with that.
All right. Okay. This is the one thing that I will not say every single time, so I'm just gonna blanket it with once. No computers were used in any of these short films. These were all analog film.
This is all hand-drawn, you can tell.
This is all hand-drawn, too.
flip books?
Yep. Billy's Balloon, 16mm film, 5 minutes, 25 seconds long. It's Hertzfeldt's 4th and final student film at UC Santa Barbara.
Oh, that explains so much, actually.
He had done 3 before this. I don't know the specific order, so I might butcher it. But there's La Amour, Genre, and Lily and Jim. And I believe all of them were part of several animation festivals known as Spike and Mike's Classic Cartoons was the name of it, and then eventually Spike and Mike's Twisted Cartoons or animation, which at the time was the only way you could really see short films that were eventually Oscar nominated or something. That's a whole history lesson in and of itself that I'm not going to go into. But if you're interested, check out Spike and Mike. Very fascinating stuff. So yeah, that's kind of all I really have. Oh no, I got a couple of things. For his class assignment, it was given a B grade. Was entered into competition. Yeah, it was entered into competition at Cannes, and went on to win the Grand Jury Award for the Sundance Film Festival.
Oh wow!
So
the
that
teacher gets sacked or something.
Yeah, that's
And is considered a parody of The Red Balloon, which I'm sure will not be the last time you'll hear the title of that film.
yeah.
Is that the one
And
Cousin Joe's?
I don't
That
know.
was in the
Is
snake
it?
draft, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there for the snake draft last week. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't know this was a parody of that, so that's interesting.
It's considered a
compare
parody.
in
I don't
my
know
head.
if it's
intentionally one.
intentionally a parody.
Oh,
I got a couple other things that I can list off later on, but that's kind of the only stuff I really need to talk about in the beginning. So
wonderful.
does anybody really want to go first?
oh, is it popcorn style throughout the short?
I don't know. I didn't say popcorn anywhere. I don't know anymore.
Who said who wants to go first? Is it linear?
Yeah.
Is it, what's the structure?
You know what? Let's all talk at once, and just whoever's loudest.
You know what? I think that's a great idea.
No, I'm
Alright,
kidding.
so,
I'm kidding. Let's popcorn.
All right.
Trying to make me look like a damn fool on my own picks. Unbelievable.
Well, that's why you're asking for your input.
Let's see. I'll go first. So I'm going to talk about it broadly because it's very hard to talk about shorts like in isolation. At least until later. This one was very kind of all flows together. The main thing for me in this one was, I guess, trying to derive, well, besides what was happening on screen, was trying to derive, like, I guess the message that I'm supposed to glean from it.
Yes, a message movie.
Yeah, it's because it's obviously trying to convey something, and I was bouncing around.
Children suck.
Yeah, children suck. I actually came to
Awesome.
two what I guess would be symbolic interpretations of it, neither of which factor into my objective scale because it can't, because symbolic in nature means it can't. I thought that. Sorry.
No, you keep going. Sorry. No, you're good. Sorry.
Yeah,
I have a thing.
Yeah, there are two interpretations that take away from this symbolically. The first one, I think, has a lot of credence based off just what it is. I assumed that, like, the balloons represented, based off my one viewing for notes and my other viewing for screenshots, was, I guess, trying to be. They represented more or less the harsh reality of the world, solely, like, I guess, torturing the children, as harsh reality tends to do when you grow up. The other one, I don't really know. I don't really have much quote unquote evidence for, but they could be the balloons could also be symbolically something for mental disabilities. Again, I'm less certain about that one because I don't really have any, I guess, evidence to support that symbolic interpretation.
Right.
So this is more my 2 points broadly. Yeah.
Yeah, symbology is tricky for me. Shocker to everyone I know.
Yeah.
I think there's only been one thing in the entire podcast that I've been swayed to accept as symbolic, and that was the thunderstorm in Sound of Music. But in terms of this one, I do feel, based off the other two shorts we watched, that there has to be something here, but I couldn't really pinpoint it either. It just seemed like he didn't like kids, but I know that's very surface level nonsense. It's more for the
That's
comedy
certainly what
aspect of
happened
it.
in this.
Yes. That's more for the humor, I would imagine, in this, but as far as symbology, I couldn't find anything personally.
I guess to go off of that, I think the strongest that I think for symbology in here to go is the one little part where two adults walk by and they have no face. They're faceless, so they're blind. How I saw it is they're blind to the workings of what's happening around children, of what could scare them, give them nightmares, and the parents are very quick in their life of like, you'll get over it kind of situation, and no one like watch them. I mean, this takes place in a pretty big park, from the end to see like the wide shot of like all the
Seemingly
kids.
a public place, yeah.
Yeah, and there's no parental supervision,
Okay.
and the only two we see who go by are no face. So I think that's just how I see it, is they're just blind to the. I don't know if the balloon's an imagination situation. It's all in the kid's head, but in terms of some symbolism found throughout, that's what stuck with me.
There's also the adult pilots in the plane that absolutely murder a child.
Apathetically,
most-
of course.
Did we see people in the plane, or was it just the plane?
Somebody had to be flying it.
Presumably, yes.
Well,
people were
then
flying.
yeah.
It's not left behind, as far as we're aware.
No,
Is this-
in
is this a connected to
realistic
left
terms, yes, someone.
Oh my God.
But in imagination, it could just be a plane.
Ryder, you gotta calm down.
Sorry. Hold on. Sorry, no, not that. I had a very loud. I have very loud, like, what do I call them? Big dick motorcyclists who were driving by, and
Oh, thank you.
well, sorry, tiny dick. I should be clarifying.
Be a little specific here.
They're just, I don't know. They have their engines turned on to the max fine-tuned thing you can imagine. So I'm like, fuck,
Maybe it got picked up.
fuck. Yeah,
A little
okay.
sound texture.
Yeah, a little sound texture, I guess, as they say.
Use the fuck to cover it up.
Yeah. All right. Sorry to.
The plane
derail the
window is
conversation.
black, though. We don't see pilots. Yes, to answer your question, Springs.
No, but I'll say the animation style definitely gave me that Ed and Eddie feel of like just constant movement, even when things are still. Because of the line. Does that have a name for that type of animation?
I mean, it's just called hand drawn.
Okay.
Like when you if you're not working in computers, you don't like have like a copy and paste kind of thing for the backgrounds, and so it's always there's something with that one. With that one, that's a specific process for the Ed and Eddie ones, because it was like a Mr. Katz. They have like the wavy lines on the outside too, and first season of home movies. But like with this, it's just because you have to draw every single frame to fill it up. There's no, so you have to draw like every movement. There's no. Well, no,
But it
like
does cover up a little of like early Disney. Like Aristocats Jungle Book. That was hand drawn, but it didn't have the movement that this does or Ed and Eddie does.
Well, it's only one. I was like the point. It's only one person who's doing all the animation. It's not.
Well, and I don't know how they animated this one in particular, because with Disney they like layer their images back and forth so they can get fluid movement. I don't know if the Don overlapped his drawings or if he just eyeballed it per image. Because something I did find, something I did find interesting was the clouds were still, which to me was interesting because the grass wasn't. If you could make the clouds still, you could have made the grass still. So he chose to not do that. Same with the title sequence. The title sequence could have been a solid image, but he decided to animate that with 2 frames going back and forth, back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting decision. I don't really know why. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it was certainly an observation I found with it.
Possibility that it just brings up to a talking point and bring it up.
Yeah,
like
that's why I put on this, like, oh, they're gonna wonder why this clouds are static and the ground isn't.
Oh, yeah, because it would have saved him a lot of time if he kept the grass static. He didn't have to have them move, but he decided to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me, does this one have wind sound effects to it?
It does.
Yes.
Okay. Because I know most of them have like bird chirps in the background.
Yeah, that's all Foley.
Okay.
You get a kid splatting, you get a maraca or rattle,
Yeah, kids play.
and
Which,
a plane.
If you want to classify, this is technically a trilogy because that shows up in every single film I picked.
The plane.
That same track. No, that same
Okay.
track. Oh, yeah, that same nature track is in every single film.
Oh, are these three a trilogy?
No, but we're classifying it with how loose we are with it.
I
the
see your
Sinister
poke and
trilogy.
prod. I see your poke and
Sinister
prod. I know what
trilogy.
you're doing, but I'm just okay.
It was all in good fun. Took it too seriously. Yeah, the ambient noise trilogy.
It's what he had on hand when doing these animations. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
It's
cheap.
the
We use
general
it.
nature track. It's fine.
Yeah. Skywalker sound.
Ah!
Is that a Wilhelm?
Yeah, it was my Wilhelm scream.
It's good attempt at it, I suppose.
Wilhelm trilogy. Yeah.
And,
I heard that.
interesting-
I heard. Yeah. Oh no, you go. Sorry, you go.
It was kind of more on the clouds that
Mhm.
there's one part when the plane is flying over them where the plane is behind a cloud and you can see part of the plane through the cloud. So
Oh, interesting.
another avenue of it not being just simple putting a cloud over a plane, but he animated the plane going through the cloud. You can see the line of the fin through the cloud as it moves.
Oh, interesting. That's good detail. I like that.
I did watch this at 0.25 because it was so short. So and I caught some of that stuff.
Some of that stuff.
That would have been a good idea for screenshots.
Yeah, that would have been. You can use that for the next ones.
That's a good detail to point out, though, because it helps with depth of field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even though it's 2 frames, and put in
Hey,
the
2
effort
frames.
for it.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Like,
I was just watching the kids get tortured by balloons the whole time. I didn't really pay attention to anything.
I mean, the
I mean,
main,
that,
the main, I guess, inconsistency I had with this was how gravity worked.
what?
But I think, to be fair to the animations, like, you could argue that the balloons they operate by their own principles in the specific universe. And
Yeah, I
wouldn't know
don't
that.
think there's a lot of balloons going on hitting children.
Yeah. Like I
That
said,
might have
they
been a-
obviously operate on their own specific principles in this universe.
Yeah,
so
they have,
I'm like,
they have their own.
so like I have it's like a small issue.
Yeah.
Mostly because they dropped the maraca, the shaker, and then obviously the balloon is able to pick him up and he can fly. So
Yeah, the other caveat to that is, like, is it even Earth? Is this colonized Mars?
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have a big exterior shot of the planet moving around to know for sure.
not in this short.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I had a crazy theory for this.
This is
Oh,
actually
please share.
moonspeak.
That these aren't even humans. That this is an
The
alien planet.
Kryptonians.
We get at least 2 species. We get the species with eyes and without eyes.
Okay.
Being the kids.
Don't you okay
perceived
him?
kids.
Oh, it's okay. It's a good theory.
Perceived kids. Obviously, anatomically off. Their eyes are massive. Meanwhile, the perceived adults have no facial features whatsoever. So we could be living on a multi-species planet here, which could help with how these kids are surviving these falls.
And that's even up
knows?
to the human mind coming up with that. It's adults and kids. They could be the
That's why it's
same
at
age.
perceived.
Yeah.
Another little
Fascinating.
fun fact: Don Foleyed most of the soundtrack in the studio with real balloons himself.
Probably
That's
why I
good.
liked it. I liked the sound of
Yeah,
the balloon
the sound of the
fittings.
Yeah.
balloons
Pretty good.
beating them were pretty accurate. It sounded like very much like a balloon. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate
and-
that.
And Billy's rattle was created by shaking a combination of cat toys together.
Oh,
All right.
So it was a rattle, not a maraca.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Still
wasn't
works
sure.
fully.
By the way,
I mean,
all
that-
these
that
things
hints
I'm
to the
reading
age
off,
of the child.
all these things I'm reading off are sourced from the Bitter Films website, which is his studio. So these are all one of the first times we can have actual definitive proof of these of legit facts.
Good to credit.
Yeah. Also, I do have to correct myself. I said Sundance, and I meant to say Slam Dance
In the award.
in the
situation.
award section. But it was a nominated for the short film Palme d'Or at Cannes. So no,
okay.
wasn't no slouch. Yeah. I heard tell from someone who won't be named that there was a lot of math involved in this one, and I'm just curious to see if that paid off in any way.
Yeah, I think so. I'll say I did the math.
Well, I'm already a little
writer.
unsure if this is correct or not. Then
there's two people who brought math to this.
Now, who
wants to go
did
first?
their theorem? Who did their theorem? Who fact checked their work and made sure it was all correct?
I tried.
Now, did you
I don't
show
know
all your
how
work?
well Crimson did.
Have you written it on paper?
I spent a good amount of time on it as well.
Okay.
I'm curious how close we'll get if we are covering the same.
Or if they're even if we're covering
Yeah.
the same thing.
I guess just for consistency's sake, we'll start with Springs, and then if Crimson is for or against, it'll bounce off there.
Okay. I'll start first. This is coming from that this is Earth. Okay?
Yeah,
The planet that we're seeing
good
here. Is
preface,
Earth.
yeah.
Yes, because of the theory that Crimson gave. So, Ryder, you have a select amount of screenshots that will be seen on the YouTube and Rumble side, possibly even the Instagram.
Yes,
Don't
but be sure to give some descriptions of
Yes.
what
So,
you're showing for our audience listeners.
I believe image 1 is an image of the cataloged height for boys average from the World Health Organization study done in 2007. And the example image shown is from the ages 15 and 4 months old down to 17 and 3 months old. And then from the site Children Wisconsin, written in 2023 of this year, the averages of children, I have an even numbers. So 4-year-olds are 37.5 to 43 inches tall with roughly 30 to 40 pounds. 6 is 42 to 49 inch, and then 36 to 60 pounds. 8-year-olds are 47 to 54 inch, 46 to 78 pounds. 10 is 50.5 to 59 inch, 54 to 102 pounds, and lastly 12 is 54 to 63.5 inch and 66 to 130 pounds. Now you might be asking, where the hell is this going? Well, where this is going is the balloon drops the kid 4 times, and upon the 4th takeoff, the kid blinks and is still alive. And that baffled me that the kid is still living at this point. So I want to do calculations up to that point to see if it's true that the kid would be alive. Let's see here.
Try this at home, please, audience.
Please don't.
With your own.
I have a quote here. If we compare adult men born in 1996 versus those a century earlier, men who have reached the age of 18 in 2014 versus 1914, we see that the global mean height of men increased from 162 to 171 centimeters, and that is from Our World and Data back in 2017, meaning the increase of 9 centimeters between the two over the span of 1 century. The reason why that has to be calculated in all this is because the averaged out I began with was a site from 2023, which is inaccurate to this animation, being the copyrighted end in the credits is 1998. So I needed to tailor the information I had to that time period because of the evolutional growth from the 2 time periods, that there is a difference in the 2. So because of that, Just putting an image in the group chat so everyone's on point of what I'm seeing, what we're seeing here, of the boy tied by the balloon by his leg. Those children.
Eponymous Billy.
Yes. So we have the math here of those born in 1998 when this takes place is what I'm seeing. So if you were born in 1997, by the time of this, you'd be 1 year old and so forth. Like if you're 1986, you'd be 12 years old because of the time difference. And the reason why I've calculated the ages from 4 to 12 originally was trying to guess the child's age. Being that he does run around means he's more than a toddler, so he can walk. And then I don't think he's at the age of a teen. But I just went with the image of the information of such of that. So to catalog in the math, those, so like a 4-year-old born in 1994, where in 2007, where I got the information of the averages, they would be 13. The average of height would be 159.3655 centimeters, which is roughly 5.2285 feet tall in height. I also have that cataloged for ages 6 and 8, being that the information I have of the average height of the 2007 study from the World Health Organization only went up to the age of 18. And being that I needed to get ages of 1998, 8 years old, where they would have been 17 of 2007, would have been the highest I could have gone. So unfortunately, I don't have the ages of 10 and 12. But roughly, I got the ages of 3 to 8 cataloged, where the averages of the 6-year-old is 170.90787 centimeters, being at roughly 5.6072 feet. And then the 8-year-old is 175.6876 centimeters with 5.764 in feet of that. And then another image I have is cataloging the size of the child, being if he's from the age group of 4 through 8, his average height in feet would be 5.2285 to 5.7640 in feet. And by calculating this by taking the image of the child over of height to double up into the drop from the balloon height to the ground, the overall feet of all, it was a calculation from the original one in the image of the balloon to the ground is an additional 4 kids of the same of this child. So overall, the 5 in total of a height would be 26.1425 to 28.82 feet, being that because of the variable age of whether the child's age between 4 to 8. However, being that we're not calculating his initial drop himself and it's just the 4 in length, it would be more accurately to be 20.914 to 23.056 in feet. So being dropped 4 times at the height that is over 400% the calculated height of the child on average has the high variable likelihood of death. Also here from where's this from? From Safe Opia by a Carrie Ban Mateti. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. From 2022, variables in fall fatality in the section of age. Aged 65 or older are more likely to suffer serious injuries or to be fatally injured as a result of a fall. Individuals under 15 years of age are the second most vulnerable group. Yes. So overall, in my math, the child would be deceased.
All right. Thank you, Rain Man.
You know what?
A lot of numbers,
the results
a lot of
are
numbers
fine.
there.
Dead kid as well.
Oh.
But very different math involved.
All right.
All right. Man, that was okay. That was a lot.
Sorry, it was a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
Or mathematicians out there are bated breath.
I took a couple different methods to figure out the child's age. We have a comparison here. We have a perceived adult male and perceived adult female, which I took the average height of an adult male, because you don't really need to do both of them in this instance, other than they adhered to it being the female is shorter than the male. So we're going with the average male height is roughly 5'9". Could go a little lower because of the time thing that Sprinks mentioned, but went off 5'9" for the adult male. I took the image of him walking and put it next to an image of Billy standing, because Billy is sitting on the ground when the adult walks by. So Billy is slightly less than half of the adult male's height. So I estimated that his height would be about 2'7", which would be 31 inches, which I then applied to a growth chart used by pediatricians from 2000 by the CDC, since we like putting in receipts. So if we look at the chart here for Rumble and YouTube, but on audio side, you got the height and the age of the child. So we go to 31 inches, and we get a range of him being 11 to 21 months old. So Billy, based off the perceived height I calculated off the adult male average, would be between 1 and 2, which is very interesting. Younger than I thought he would be. So going off of Billy's height that I calculated, being 31 inches, I took all of the screenshots of him going up into the sky, which I think was like 7 or so, and I laid them over each other so I could calculate the height of the total fall, which is pretty large. So going off the stacked image, I calculated he had been risen up to 589 feet from the ground up. And using that metric, I put it next to the wide shot image of him to the clouds to calculate that height, because that is a very different height to the first drop, which was 186. I posted the wrong image in the chat there. That's fine. So I overlaid the tall chart with the wide shot chart. He might look bigger, but I overlaid. They are the same. So that one's 186 feet. And that is going off of the estimated height of the kid. I did a secondary measurement of the clouds. So if we're going off the cloud height, which we see 2 on the first drop, he goes past a layer and then goes into the second layer, which would be the altocumulus layer of clouds, presumably. And that can be anywhere from 7 to 23,000 feet up. And I also calculated how long it would have taken him to fall from that height, which would be 40 seconds to 1 minute and 55 seconds, which aren't conveyed, but that would be very boring in a short that is 5 minutes. So there's my research that I put in.
Crimson, well
Awesome.
done. Well done. I think we may be the first people in existence to ever do this.
That's probably not wrong.
Yeah. Don't you love it when your film and TV podcast does math for you? Isn't that so much fun? Unfortunately, I don't have any numbers. I have a little fact to put in. Without access to the university's editing room for the last night of editing, Final Picture was locked using the only functioning equipment available, a rusted, barely operational silent movie-era projector in a wall for a screen.
That's cool.
Oh, that's cool. I like that detail.
Yeah. And if anybody was still curious about the message of this movie, I have from the company itself. As Ton began animating the last half of the film, he had alternative endings in mind, but decided to stick with ambiguity, avoiding any sort of obvious punchline. Audience theories about what the film, quote-unquote, really means have ranged everywhere from socio-political messages, childhood's innocence versus the agenda of society, to a running commentary on the struggles of alcoholism.
All right.
Oh.
I'm not surprised there. The alcoholism one is a surprise, but not surprised in the whole loss of.
Yeah, the innocence one is, I think, pretty.
That's probably the most predominant one.
Yeah. And also, still as a film student, Dom was the youngest director in competition at Cannes Film Festival in 1999, when this film was put in there. And this was also made mostly in response to his previous animated feature, which was called Lily and Jim, which was about 13 to 17 minutes of talking head segments with dialogue lip syncs, and he decided he did not want to do that for a second film.
Fair enough.
So that's why this film is silent, for the most part.
Aside from a balloon hitting.
It's better for it.
Aside from the balloon and the ambient nature and
look, I mean, the screams of children while amusing at times would have just made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's silent. It's much funnier. And I guess we can go into ratings if nobody has anything for this first little.
Oh, I got more.
Okay, never mind then. All right.
I think the first instance we have of Billy, where his eyes are going opposite directions and his pupil display the lack of intelligence that this character has. To go on when the balloon attacks him, being that we see a wide angle of the field he's in, and he has far space, it cuts real quickly when he goes out of frame to come back in, which I see it as more of so Billy pacing back and forth rather than trying to avoid the balloon.
Interesting.
If anyone else caught that. So I don't think he's actually trying to, or he's not necessarily in fear of the balloon, because even when he gets taken up to wave at the kid in the yellow one, he's still like smiling or like waving at the kid, like everything that already happened to him being dropped is in the past.
I'm not going to die alone.
Yeah. Like you could definitely see him after the adults walk by. You can see him smile when the balloon gives him back his shaker. And then obviously the smile, he's still smiling when the balloon's taking him up, at least for the first few frames that he's being taken up, and then that changes.
Then a straight face, yeah.
Yeah. Good old-fashioned comedy.
Yeah. My favorite part in this is when the balloon turns Billy to look at the other kid with the yellow balloon, and the kids are waving back and forth to each other, but I like it better of the balloons staring at one another. Like the balloons are like two serial killers knowing what they're doing.
Yeah. Balloons are evil. That's my one takeaway from this.
Yeah. As it turns out, pellet guns are probably very popular in this universe.
And then my last question I actually have here is, being that the balloon attacks after Billy shakes the maraca a couple times, is the balloon attacking because it's annoyed of the noise? Which, a follow-up question to it is, can the balloon hear things?
I don't think it is, because I think this is a balloon revolution.
The balloon illusion.
Because it's not just one balloon that got irritated by a rattle. Every balloon's attacking everybody, at least all the kids.
Yeah, they're destroying a generation.
Adults attacked.
Yeah.
But when the adults walk by, or said adults, they stop.
Adults are smart enough to pop them with their keys.
Pop,
or something.
Yeah, the kids, they can easily kill the kids.
Yeah. So I saw it more as a revolution. Less an annoyed balloon.
Yeah, I suppose that would be my literal interpretation of it as well.
I don't know. I think it starts off where it's like it's just an annoyed balloon, and then you realize that it's all balloons. All balloons hate children.
You keep tugging me and pulling me down to the ground. I need to lift off.
Yeah, and then what I have here, which is a little side note, which then again, just very nerd of me. This whole Billy's balloon reminded me of a Pokemon named Drifloon, and I have
You're right, that is nerdy.
information here from the bulbagarden.net. Hopefully I said that correctly. about Drifloon. Desiring company, Drifloon often seeks out children and grabs their hands. However, to how light it is, it can be resisted easily and is often pulled around. This results in Drifloon running away from any children who are rough with it. Drifloon also dislikes heavy children. There are rumors that Drifloon steals children who hold onto it, guiding them to the afterlife. However, Drifloon was introduced in Generation 4 of Pokemon, which was released in April 22nd, 2007 in America, 2006 for Japan, which would have been 8 years after the fact of this. So if anything, Pokemon stole the inspiration of Drifloon from this animation.
Bold claim.
It's certainly a
Possible.
bold claim.
I mean, this was I know it's hard to picture now because we're in 20X or whatever. Don't want to date this. You know, this is 1998. This was a pretty big deal at the time. I mean, not as much as some of these other later ones that we'll talk about, but this was like the short film of 1998.
Yeah, I was too
Thinking
young
in
to
my head,
perceive
I
it then.
guess so.
So.
I don't know what the Pixar short of this time was.
Pixar didn't exist yet.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Toy Story was 1995.
I can rewrite history. This is my shorts.
Oh, well. This came out the same year Bugs Life did.
This invented shorts, actually.
Yeah, the word short hadn't been used up until Billy's Balloon.
I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I think my last sentiments are regarding just like how literally you're supposed to take this, and obviously tends towards the ridiculous side, being balloons are sentient.
I mean, yeah. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, but obviously, I think it's meant to be either comedy or you're supposed to abstract and derive whatever symbolic meanings that you want to from it. Yeah. So
I love the idea of there being a really deep philosophical meaning for it, and obviously you can read that in. I mean, there's enough not there that you can kind of have whatever you want the movie be about.
You're free to interpret it what you want. Like I said, my two interpretations of it were just like pretty much what I came up with in the 2 minutes after this. Like that's so
you just stating like, okay, what did I just watch, and how do I figure it out?
That's how my mind rationalized it.
Yeah.
I guess, but like I understand fully that it's an amusing little short film, regardless of my philosophical musings that I pulled from it. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, but I was like, I want to dig deep. What is this? What's this about? What's the message? This is a message film. Obviously, this needs a message and a point. But then I realized how much funnier it would be if that was like the ulterior motive, and it was really just a film about balloons beating the shit out of kids.
Like I said, that might be it, and that would be funny. Like I said, they got their audience to make the meaning of the film for them. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if there's nothing else and no more asides or anything, ratings, please, gentlemen. We'll go down the line, starting with writer.
All right. I'll give my subjective. Subjective first was probably a solid 7. I enjoyed it. I would definitely rewatch it again. I would show people it if they were ever in a particular mood for it. Objective. I think I'm at probably an 8.5. I think they accomplished their objective fairly well. We can debate on what that objective was, but it is a film that was well constructed. There's not really much here in terms of plot outside balloons are evil and killing children. I like Crimson's theory that it's a revolution. A balloon. And then world building. I think, like I said, I found the only thing consistent theory was the gravity, but that's disregarding. It doesn't have the time to convey those things. So again, not really a big stickler on it. And then character is Billy. He's fine. Does his job
for the age. Yeah.
That's it for me. So,
Crimson, if you would.
Subjectively, I'm giving it a 6.5. I'm fine watching it again. It didn't really make me laugh too much. It It was fine. It was there.
That made me laugh. That it didn't make you laugh.
Objectively, I'm going to match Writer's 8.5 because we don't know if it's an alien planet. It probably isn't. So not really going to put that into fix things. So him surviving the fall, the kids just surviving the falls is a problem. And yeah, just the gravity, I guess, is an issue. So yeah, I think 8.5's fair.
All right. I know I picked this, but it's probably not my most favorite of his short work. But there's a method to my madness here that I will expound upon later on. But I figured this was a good starting point, and I mostly just this is probably they're gonna take the soundbite of this, and later on I like kids getting beat up and stuff. Comically beat up, not literally beat up. Comically beat up. No real stuff. It has to be funny for comedy's sake. So this is definitely within that wheelhouse, without a doubt. And I like that it's very simple. Not, there's not like a huge abstract background or something or a big set or whatever. It's grass lines, clouds, balloons, and a bunch of kids, and they're all pretty much basically as simple as they could possibly be. Yep. With just a few tweaks here and there.
Yeah, they gave the kids just enough like character design for us to differentiate them.
Yeah. Which I'm sure anybody who's a big graphic designer or a character designer or whatever, the more you take away, the harder it is to convey the emotions, because you have less of a palette to work with. So I think that's something that this isn't really. I think a shining example of that for him, but I think some of his later ones kind of gradually become more and more of the less is more dynamic. But talking about this one specifically, you can see a little bit of it. So yeah, it's not my favorite of his, but I can definitely see why it was kind of a big deal, at least in the short film animated world. I feel pretty confident. I'll give this a 6 overall.
All right, and then me last. Subjectively, I give it a 6. I think it was fine. Actually, originally after watching it, it was a 6.5. I did lower it because it just kind of the whole thing is just killing kids, as I kind of took it of like face value. And I mean, the animation's good, and as Sinister said, it is simple and gets kind of to the point of what's happening. But it's not something I'd rave about. So 6. Objectively difficult. This was difficult for me to do objectively on my scaling of everything. I finalized it at a 5. But it has ranged from a 3 to an 8. So I'm settling with 5.
And Sinister
Can
finally
you say
starts
why
getting...
it's a 5?
Yeah.
Why it's a 5? It's so there's various shots which are nice. It shows different points of view of things like all the children. It shows the feel the depth of the other kids, so it's not just 2D. It actually has 3D space, especially with the plane you pointed out, Crimson, which is a nice detail, even though it's 2 frames, but it's still a nice detail to put in there. So there is field and there is more of a world than what is just like pen and paper.
Easily accessible to the first-time viewer.
Yeah, there's interpreted messages to come across, because then again, I'm going in blank slated, so I don't know. So it could be the adults are blind. How I took it is the adults are blind to the situations of the children, but there's only one small instance of that, and I don't think it strengthens because of just 2 blank-faced adults walking by, and I think there needed to be more to strengthen that if that is the case. And the kid surviving, to me, is a big problem because I did over an hour of math on it. The sound effects, I think, were fine. They fit. The children not screaming doesn't have to be vocally screaming, but not actually screaming about the balloons. Like Billy is a dumb kid because he's waving happily to the other kid in with the yellow balloon. I like the thought that the balloons actually have a mind of their own and can think when the red and yellow one are looking at each other in the sky. That's how I interpreted it, but they also could just be like machine made to just rid out kids, because it thought to me like it could be like a purge situation, or like the thinning to like dwindle down the population numbers by taking out kids or something, as a thought. So a lot of like up in the air what it could be, with nothing cemented other than what is seen. So it's not as worse with a 3 of like I don't get it kind of thing, but I don't see it as like an 8 because it is something that's like, wow, it's like fantastically done. I mean, the animation I think is very well done, but everything like so I'm kind of just middle grounding it from the pluses and minuses I see. So 5.
Okay. We're kind of reversing this in the way that I thought we were. I was kind of hoping this would be the least talked about one, and then the third one would be the most talked about one. So we'll see if I was half right. All right. Moving on from Billy's Balloon, we go to the probably one of, if not the most famous of Don Hertzfeld's shorts, Rejected.
Yeah. I thought I was watching. I thought I was watching Astiff for a second.
Yes.
Definitely, I definitely think this is inspired ASDF. Like obviously this has more artistic integrity attached. No offense to the guys who do Astiff. I think they do a wonderful job. There's obviously more of a point to this one.
Yeah. So we do have some history. So if you want to start down the line, I guess actually no. We'll start with Crimson because he was the one who said it. So Crimson, what's your history?
I have seen one thing from this. My anus is bleeding. I wasn't expecting to come across that.
You need to go to the hospital?
But then I saw the cloud guys. Like, this is tickling my brain. This looks familiar. And then that happened. Like, oh my gosh, I've seen this part before.
But it was weird for you to have seen that one scene out of this.
It is. I don't remember where I saw it from. It might have been like a compilation of some sort. I don't know.
Probably. Like out of context, funny moments or...
Yeah.
All right, writer, yours.
My history with this is also pretty similar. Not just because of my, having been an internet surfer for a while now and knowing about ASDF, but I definitely when I was watching ASDF and I was in the period of my life where I was showing ASDF to everybody, I'm pretty sure some of these came up into my recommendations. So. I also, similar to Crimson, I've also seen My Anus is Bleeding. And I think
somebody's eating Chipotle. Yeah. Where's all this coming from?
Yeah, right, I know. I also think that I've seen a very, very specific clip of the alien ship coming down and pulling out the guy's eyes and then just leaving.
Yeah, that is... That's something I'll touch on later on. I won't say anything right now, but
okay.
Yeah. But there's a reason behind that where you probably feel like you've seen that before. Was that it?
Yeah,
Didn't
that's all I
cut
got.
You off there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No worries.
And Brinks.
Not.
Can we get 3?
Out of fog. Oh, okay. Yeah, past Chipotle. My anus is bleeding. I've seen it. Out of foggy memory, I've probably seen this back in like 6th grade. However, the My Anus is Bleeding with the dancing, I've seen probably at least 10 times throughout my life.
There we go. Wow.
It's a very middle school thing I've been shown.
Yeah.
This bit in there.
When all the kids were nerds and just, laughing at haha dick joke, that sort of thing.
When they had access to a cell phone.
Yeah.
Like, I can use YouTube at the cafeteria stuff.
So yes, Rejected. 35 millimeters, 9 minutes and 18 seconds. This is the first, will be quote unquote, real-time theater level filmmaking. 35 millimeter. Production began March 3rd, 1999, and final cut was completed in June 2000. So, roughly a year. And then Foley and everything definitely took another 6 months. Over 80 hours were spent mixing and recording sound.
For this specifically?
And for this specifically, yes.
Yeah.
Lots of crackling paper sounds.
That's true.
Lots of...
Gotta get the right one.
And you might have noticed the music. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, first two movements for all the title card moments.
Mm-hmm.
And that's but the impetus for this movie stemmed from, funnily enough, Billy's Balloon becoming kind of a circuit hit on the animated festival. And he was approached to do ads for various companies, which was kind of how you made money back in the day. If you were an animator, you made ads for different companies and that sort of stuff because it was kind of the prime time. And he did not want to sell out, but he thought of if he could do like an Andy Kaufman thing where he just made the worst ads of all time and just take the money and see if they ever aired. But then realized that he...
So I have a question. Did he actually submit some of these animations?
No.
Okay.
No. He realized that he could just do the ads without having to actually submit them to a company or anything. So that became the impetus for Rejected.
All right, interesting.
Some of these are actually cartoon ideas that he'd had that he just never did anything with. I think that My Anus is Bleeding is something from a student film that he did that hasn't survived. A couple other bits and pieces, but for the most part, they were made for the film. And if you didn't know, I do know the other songs used in this film. So if you're trying to catch me up that I just knew the Beethoven's Ninth, I know the other ones too. I sourced them all.
Well, I know a song in the third film we'll be covering.
Yeah, I do too. All right. I'm not going to front load on this one. I have a lot of stuff I could talk about on this one, but I'll let we'll go first. I'm going to select it random. I don't have my fingers up. No. And Sprinks.
Sweet. Let's start with the reason why this one is 3 pages of notes for me. So, let's go to the point where we find our reoccurring characters again of the two guys. I forget I have them listed. The first instance. No. The two guys first with the voices not sinking to their mouths, and then a brain creature comes out, and then the pig face like alien flies by. Like that's our first instance of those two. And then the second one is into the dubbing voice joke, which goes into the anime dubbing joke that came across to me, and then the bloody eye that's continually bleeding. That to me seemed to be a reason of symbolism. So I looked up, writer, if you wouldn't mind with the image, I looked up the reasons of a bleeding eye. So what I have here is 8 spiritual meanings when you dream about bleeding eyes. Number 1, the end of one stage, essentially meaning the conclusion of one stage and the beginning of another. I saw these as either examples from either Don Hertzfeldt himself of doing the animation, and also of the two characters being portrayed. So the one stage I see is from this one, how I took it is it's the end of seeing them in the past of the first time we encountered them, and now we're seeing them again for a second time in a new stage because they're doing something different. Second one we have here is the new growth and development. Please interject me if you'd like to cover about one of the stages.
Will do.
Stage 2 is the new growth and development, where you may have experienced a kind of loop in your life, a series of recurring events that prevented you from moving on and hold you captive. I saw this as seeing these two characters again and having all the sketches compile into one project, being held captive to the craft of the animation of Rejected, from the premise of like they were rejected shorts, so it's just like continually like trying again that get rejected, so you're just to the craft, which an example goes into the magnum opus obsession syndrome or obsessive compulsive personality disorder, to strive at perfectionism, order, and or neatness. And that I saw coming from the animation of Don Hertzfeldt more than the two characters for that. Number 3, we have questions will soon be solved. Many times, bleeding from the eyes represent having a clarity of thought about what to do or what will be better for you in the long run. And to me, that could also be seen as this is the pinpoint where he knew an end goal of where he was going and why these characters are now reoccurring and have been brought up again, rather than a continually new random premise to go with. It could be as simple as like he just likes the two characters, but the fact that they're returned to me means that he has more of a purpose for them. Number 4, pay attention to your judgment. If your eyes start to bleed or become clouded with blood, there's an indication that your judgment is skewed and you will need to go away from the issue to make a more rational decision. I could see that as like the first set of failed, rejected ones that we see, I believe, are the Family Learning Center, Learning Channel, first Learning Channel, to then go to the next one of the Johnson and Mills Corporation, of being rejected once and then your judgment's a little skewed, so go in with again, but then rejected a second time, and that's where he gets the purpose of finding an ending to the rejected cartoons he's doing. Number 5, listen to the external voice. The combination of eyes and blood in dreams may be advising you to set aside your obstinacy and follow the advice offered to you by significant persons in your life. Thus, you must put aside your concerns and pay attention to them. And that kind of goes with the premise of being told by these companies that you're being rejected, even though they're reaching out to him. So he's actually giving work to them to try, giving work to them to actually try, and they're just being, rejected from him. But he's trying again with new things for the Family Learning Center and trying for the Johnson Mills, and then the third one, I forget what the third one is. It's probably somewhere in my notes. Anyway, so that was number 5. Number 6, potential bad news. Bleeding eyes also has some negative implications, which are closely associated with bad luck, adversity, or a situation in which you should exercise caution. I think that one's pretty simple. He's having bad luck that these rejected cartoons are sticking, and they're all being sent away rather on his own doing for the purpose of the ending, of trying to, well, I'll tackle that later, of what I think the whole thing means. But just having bad luck that they're actually sticking or being revised or being edited, of like, hey, can we just cut this part out situation. Number 7, a potential argument. Bleeding eyes might indicate a potential argument, disapproval, scandal, distress, depression, or betrayal by friends or other close relatives. I think that's pretty easy with the two characters we've seen. They seem to be arguing. One point, he rips his gut out and says, I'm the Queen of France. They're just yelling at each other in this second part of it.
Yeah, for
so
me,
it's just,
like, this was the easiest one to apply onto the characters themselves. Number 7, being that like they're clearly had a disagreement over something. So
yeah, for the sake of the comedy to come across in whatever they're advertising at the point. And then lastly, number 8, lack of confidence in yourself. Bleeding eyes denotes a great deal of self-doubt, mistrust, and uncertainty. And the key word out of this one is uncertainty. I don't know if Don started with the purpose of knowing where these were going as the full length to the end, or if it compiled into that with the uncertainty, like any of these are good. I mean, giving stuff to be submitted after being asked, it's like you're uncertain what will stick or what could stick. And he tried again and again after the Family Learning Channel and the Johnson Mills Corporation.
I can safely say that the sequence of events was never locked down. Everything was cycled around.
interesting. So they didn't really have an end goal.
The finish, the ending of this short wasn't even conceived till like halfway through production.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When I was going to ask Spring Space Off, all that, one thing stood out. I didn't really see the Queen of France as the same guys. Because they're not covered in blood, or one's not missing an eye or anything. I saw that as two different guys.
Oh, okay. I saw that in the realm of like cartoon, like it just cuts to and everyone's healed. So it could be, could not be. But it didn't go with the same out of sync mouth that the first two interpretations of them acted with. So I lean more with you on that. It could be 50-50.
Also, the reason
by the end they all keep their injuries and stuff as well. So I do think they're two different guys.
Okay.
The reason why the mouth syncing is off, except for a couple scenes, is because it was animated before the sound was recorded. So it was just kind of.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't an intentional thing?
I mean, it did become intentional, but it wasn't like. I mean, he tried to make it as close as it can, but it goes with the idea that these are bad commercials. So
okay, so it wasn't played for like the anime parody dubbing
joke.
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
Probably commercial.
Yeah, the only ones that were the ones that really had to be specific. So the "my spoon is too big." That was, he Don did those lines because he knew what the mouth movements would be, but everything else was done in post, with a few exceptions. But I could only get the "my spoon is too big" for definitive if that was recorded at the time.
Okay. I love the messaging.
Yeah, the messaging of artistic integrity slowly being destroyed by commercial work.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I loved it.
Yeah, it's this is probably my favorite of all of his shorts, and it is it's really really good. Even this inspired like Adult Swim stuff, ASDF. Funny thing that I mentioned earlier was because Ryder had mentioned the feeling, and it is possible you did see the actual scene. I'm not discounting that; it's very possible. But if anybody remembers those Pop-Tart commercials with the stick figures around early 2000s,
they do look the same, don't they?
Yeah, that's yeah.
Oh, it's Paul. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, because he was, funnily enough, once you do a very anti-commercial work short film, you get a bunch of offers to do commercial work.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did ask the eyeball pulling. Did you have an answer for that one with the spaceship coming down and like pulling out one of the characters' eyeballs, and they walk into the yield sign?
Yeah. Well, that was that was like because they had a Pop-Tarts one that had the alien that came down with like this. Yeah. So that I think some of it was lifted. Obviously, it's not the same. So like I said, you might have probably actually seen the actual bit, but I also know there's a Pop-Tarts one that's really close to that.
The more I like the fact that each, like, after we finish each short, it cuts to like, hey, this is the family learning channel, or hey, this is Johnson and Mills food stuff.
Yeah,
I really like that the messages at the end slowly get more deranged.
Yeah, it's like
now with more sodium, sweet Jesus, all the way to like sugar poor or whatever.
Yeah, I am a consumer whore, and how. Yeah, no, it's all really good stuff.
It degrades with his mental state. It tells the story of the author.
There's a really good video. I think it's also on his YouTube channel, probably further down. But he has the original. It's not a good quality, but like the original version with his commentary on the bottom, or he does like a director commentary over it. But doesn't record anything, he just writes it out, which is probably one of my favorite director commentaries I've ever seen. It's very good, very funny.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah, it was so short. He eventually tells like most of like the production story, and then he just starts filling it in with a bunch of other stuff. That's pretty fun. I'm sure Sprinks has 3 pages worth of stuff. Do you have anything else, or was it mostly just the spiritual meanings behind Bleeding Eyes
The bleeding eyes was the main thing. Mostly, I just had little bits about like each short. Like the first one, my spoon is too big. I saw that as like doing takes, like multiple takes.
Like an
and
actor.
then the random, and then the random vacuum noise confused me. I didn't get. I guess the only thing is like the purpose is for it to add more randomness after the fact of a banana walking in.
Oh. Well, I think it's to show the lack of professionalism in the commercials, right? The laziness.
Yeah,
of
it's like
commercials.
Well, like, what does that have anything to do with like
mouth.
like anything to do with the Family Learning Channel? My spoon is too big.
Yeah, a lot of these don't fit into what they were, which
Well, yeah,
I think is the
good point.
Kind of already half knowing going in after being asked. So,
I can say that was one of the last things that was animated. Was the opening scene.
Oh,
interesting. Well, I mean, they had to lip sync that, so that actually makes more sense.
And it was actually going at the beginning to sort of get people prepared. So it wasn't supposed to be funny at all. It was just supposed to be weird and, be like, oh, okay, And then
wetting the whistles
and then at
first.
the premiere. Yeah, and then at the premiere, he was like it started and, my spoon is too big. And then it was huge laughs, just huge laughs. Then the banana comes on stage and, banana comes out and it's like, I'm a banana. And then it just like erupts. And it drowned. And he even put like the vacuum cleaner on there. It's like, it's just like a da-da thing. And it drowned out the sound of his vacuum, which he was really upset about at the time. But he was like, I didn't get it. It wasn't funny to me. I didn't understand why it was funny. Which is the best kind of humor. Humor you don't understand.
When you miss the fact of your own joke.
Yeah, when you purposely make something that's not funny and it's received as funny. Is even funnier.
Yeah, I know exactly how that feels.
I think I also know exactly how that feels.
I think we've all experienced that.
I don't.
No, Crimson is
not a funny guy.
No. You eating cardboard instead of pizza is funny.
You just are funny.
Personal attacks.
You just are funny.
Crimson likes.
You have no control over it. Crimson likes Little Caesar, and I like Little Cheezers. Huh.
Just want to give context to people asking why he's eating cardboard.
Because I love it.
I love it, and I want it, and I need it, and I fucking love it. I have another very interesting fact.
Go on.
All right.
This was nominated for an Academy Award.
That's impressive.
Pretty big.
Can you imagine?
What did the Academy think of it?
I'm sure it was dead silence. Like, what the fuck did we just watch?
I'd like to imagine, I'm imagining a bunch of pompous assholes sitting down for something like the Oscars, and then this comes on.
Hold on, I totally forgot. Me being unprofessional, I was gonna look up what was also nominated for shorts. At that same, it was 2000 shorts Oscars, 2001 would have been. I'm just curious what it was in the league with. There we go. Okay, no, it was 2000. Sorry. All right, and it was up against three films that I've never heard, or two other films that I've never heard of.
Wonderful.
This is for animated short, by the way, not.
Yeah.
Just Harrywig Maker, British-German short stop motion animation film, 15 minutes long. By Michael Dudok de Witt. Oh, no, sorry. That's, Stefan and Anat Schaffler, the Periwig Maker. And then Father and Daughter, 2000 Dutch animated short film written and directed by Michael Dudok de Witt. And Father and Daughter won. So out of the three, only one of them was American. And did not win.
I actually had a question. I assumed they were speaking German whenever they were talking another language. So that's kind of confirmed that they were speaking German.
It's just a made up language.
Okay.
In this one, it's gobbledygook, and they actually did say things that were intelligible, which I think Don himself said. Unfortunately, it was funnier when it was unintelligible. But yeah, this was really edited, and I mean like editing a film is one thing, because you kind of have, there's a structure to it, and it's, you only have to take off like bits that aren't the part of the film, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But with like comedy, and especially with animated stuff, you have to get really, really specific, because if you, for whatever reason, and I do believe this, some things are funnier with like 4 frames off that aren't funny if you leave the 4 frames on. Like that silence, or that, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think
What happened in Billy's balloon?
Yeah.
Like when the balloon's just holding him over the ground for longer than you would think.
Yeah.
To build up the humor aspect of it.
Yeah. Like, so like there were like minuscule, like detailed edits. There were like 1 to 2 frames, which, I mean, is crazy. And the film's first cut clocked in at over 12 minutes, and then was, like I said earlier, radically retooled and fine-tuned down to 1 and 2 frame edits. And a finished scene was cut many weeks after a picture was locked. There's a couple. I know there's one ad that was a deleted scene that's on like some DVD compilation that they've released that's now discontinued. I don't remember what was in that one. I think it was one of the Johnson and Mills ones, though. But it's just kind of gross, and it's not really super fun. Mm-hmm. But also, most of the animation was completed before camera gear was purchased, and the movie was then photographed before any of the editing equipment was in place.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, like, when the characters are, like, one of the obvious standout to me is, like, how highly edited this was when, characters running through, like, to different pages.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
ending, obviously, is very, very edited, but...
Oh, yeah.
I think the clearest point for me is just when he's running from page to page, like in the page itself is like a barrier almost.
Mm-hmm. And the proper editing sessions for this, because they have to have actual proper editing sessions, were taking place in the dead of night on the Warner Brothers lot when nobody was looking, because the same editor who worked on Billy's Balloon helped on this, and she was working at Warner Brothers at the time. So they had access to the editing bay there.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And there's a funny story that the same editing bay they were in was for the what do they call it? Not the found, but like this film stock. So like, you have pictures of bombing planes or, whatever from old World War II, newsreels and that kind of stuff. But the film stock in this particular editing bay was animals mating.
All right.
So you just got like, hundreds of feet of film of just animals getting it on. And I mean, not like just like horses and like, cows or whatever, but like horseshoe crabs.
Maybe that's why they gave the guy bunny ears. They wanted to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And weirdly, the sound effect of the baby falling down the stairs, which again, tying in with my love of children getting injured in cartoon comedy.
Where is this going, Sinister?
Yeah. That is one of like the stock sound effects from that editing bay or whatever. And apparently it's very popular because he said he's heard it in a bunch of other things.
Interesting.
So it's like it's the Wilhelm scream of rejected, I guess. It's been used countless times. Another little fun fact. I got a bunch of these unless somebody has another point they want to do, please. I do. Okay, thank you.
Didn't know how far we were going with that.
I got a lot. I got a whole pamphlet. I got notes.
So as cool as the ending is, there was an aspect to it that I believe was missing, which was the amount of blood that was spilled during this. There was none shown anywhere in this ending scene where everybody's getting butchered. The whole my anus is bleeding part fills up almost the entire screen with blood. Him and that blood is gone. the other 5 clouds that were dancing, they come back at the end, but him and the blood disappear. They don't have an ending.
Well, they get
Meanwhile,
crushed by
everybody
the
else
family learning sign, I think,
gets-
or his people.
Those
Yeah,
are the
they get-
dancing ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went back and counted. It's the same 5 dancers, but
I went frame by frame and I counted those dancing.
yeah, there were 5 clouds and 5 died. He was
Uh-huh.
the 6th, but he never came back.
He was the only one who
But
survived.
everybody else returned for an ending, pretty much, except the kids with the nipple
baby.
ticks.
Yeah,
And
angry ticks fire out of my nipples.
Yeah, so I don't know. It feels weird that the conclusion is like sucking in everything from the short, but it's missing elements. And I think having the red would be visually striking during this cool crumpled paper stuff that they were doing.
I agree with you on one hand, but I also think that it would take away the gratuitous nature of it if it was filtered out, because it kind of makes it really sickening, and I think that's sort of the point. And then if you kind of played it in through the house, it would sort of lose some of that, because I think a lot of these are really stand out in singular. And then, when you have the ending where everything's collapsing and, coming down and all that stuff, you kind of get more of a scope of how they're connected. But taking away the, but if you kind of like make them still feel really singular, it would take away a lot of the impact, I think. So if he was still covered in blood and there was still all that, I think it would still work. I'm not, we don't have it, so I can't argue whether it would have worked or wouldn't have worked because it's just not there. So it's kind of up in the air, discussion wise. But I think it would have played a little bit less, and it would have kind of not had as much impact in the end, because it still would have felt like, oh, yeah, the bleeding anus. That's really gross. Yeah, thanks for showing that again or something. I don't know.
I
think it still works without that.
It works without it. I think it could be used effectively though at the end, especially when people are getting crushed. Like just the splat effect occasionally. Like it doesn't need to be super super over the top, but I think a little bit of that would have been very striking as a visual here towards the end.
Mm. No, I don't. Well, and I think the other problem is that it takes up a whole screen. Let's say they're 2 separate entities. Because the other 5 guys aren't getting covered in blood or whatever. It's just the one guy bleeding out of his anus. I think that would have been like, you would have had to class like, okay, but why is it so big and there's no blood anywhere else? If it's filling up that space, it would have been so many questions that then you would have had to answer with that, I guess. Because like, okay, is it just like filling up the frame? Is it filling up, where are we putting the walls in for where he's at that's still connected, kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, by the ending, is it all on one page, or is it on several pages?
I don't know. I'm not Don Hertzfeldt.
Well, it's kind of a general for everyone to answer. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I think it's all it's the rejected Toonscape.
Can you ask me?
I think it's several pages.
Yeah.
Oh, so the ending, we get a bunch of crumpling paper. They get sucked into a black hole, or some do. Just everything's collapsing. Is each cartoon on their own page of the notebook, or are they on one big page?
Well, yeah, but the bunny guy runs past some of the stick guys.
Yeah.
And he's also in cahoots with the funny hats
ruffles, guy, which could be like flipping pages, right?
Okay, so you're asking not in its entirety, but in segments. Is it connected? I guess.
Is the whole short in a book, or is it on a page?
On a page. Well, it's an interesting thing because now we have to quantify what a world is, I guess. Is it big enough to be a world, or is it sectioned off in some way? Like, is one piece of paper one world and another piece of paper is the next, or is the whole thing one world?
Craig, you've been fairly quiet. You got anything on any?
I guess there's been a lot of talk. I don't want to interrupt anyone. I think it's one world because the Family Learning Channel landed on the dancing. The Family Learning Channel landed on the dancing Little
No,
Things
joke.
and the Dancing Little Things were not a part of the Family Learning Channel.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like they're all, when it's all crashing together. Like it's implied that it's all one world because they're all like crashing down together.
Paper crinkling.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't have a giant paper
So it's
crinkle.
all on one sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I always. I mean, to be fair, when I was watching it, I didn't as animation. I viewed it as like an actual thing. I wasn't thinking in terms of drawing on a paper. I was invested in these little guys. In my whole world. So yeah, I don't. I don't think you need to have the fifth guy because I think he suffered enough. I think if I bled out of my anus and drowned in that blood, I would be like, you know what? I don't need to get crushed by the Family Learning Channel or get sucked through a hole.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
You finish.
No, you good.
Right,
no,
I
picked this. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, there was a lot of like the messaging also is very very quick. I think my favorite one was the silly hats, where the guy comes in with a top hat. They all stare at him. We cut away to Family Learning Channel, and then we cut back to the guy in the top hat just getting the shit kicked out of him.
No individuality.
Yeah.
Learn your lesson. Take your lumps.
Yeah. So that to me, I think was.
His party had a silly hat.
Yeah. That was pretty like
that was
pretty like a face value one.
Is it a hat you would wear normally?
Yeah.
Like if you weren't having a party, would you wear a party hat?
No.
I'm asking.
I don't know if I call it silly.
Well, like if you were like walking on the street, you saw a guy walking at you in a business suit, but he had a big party hat on, would you think he looked kind of funny? Like nobody else is wearing a party hat. He's the only one wearing a party hat, and there's no real context for it.
Well, I'd say the outfit as a whole is weird, yeah, but I don't think just a party hat in isolation is in of itself silly.
What is a silly hat to you? You gotta,
I mean,
we gotta quantify it. It's gotta have a
like
hook.
Snake bunny ear things. I don't know what to call them, but that's a weird hat. The other one, feather needle. That one could also be debated, but.
Is a silly hat a hat you wouldn't normally wear, or is it a silly hat that just looks funny? I guess where are we quantifying silly at? And like, at what point does a hat become silly? I guess to you, when does like a hat verge into the silly territory?
Well, let's say we have a cowboy hat on a person, not silly. But if we have the cowboy hat like open up and it's got like a mouth part, that's a silly hat.
Okay, that seems a little bit farther than I was expecting.
Outside the norm.
Louise's bunny hat, is that like from Bob's Burgers? Is that a silly hat?
Is that the Mabel character?
Yes.
I've only seen one episode of Bob's Burgers.
The one with the pink ears, pink bunny ears.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't think those are innately silly. No.
Is it because you've seen that?
It's subjective, though. Silly subjective.
Okay. So, all right. That's kind of what I was building towards. If it was more of a you thing, or if it was a general rule, what a silly hat was. Okay. Well, we've quantified a little bit there of silly hats. So, if you come in with a cowboy hat, you're not silly. But if it opens up and there's a mouth in there, that's a silly hat.
That's
to Crimson,
silly.
anyway. To Crimson. Since we touched on the ending a little bit, I'm going to go into a little bit of how that was done. The crumple and paper effects are a simple blend of stop motion animated paper and traditional animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was figuring it was stop motion with some like motion blur animation stuff.
There was my first note after the first advertisement came up for the food company, and they said, now with more sodium, sweet Jesus. I might have died laughing, and my first note after that was, can I get this person to animate for every Disney product that's come out in the last 2 years?
It's pretty good. It's that level. There's a level of a good quality of cynicism and also like just reality.
Yeah, exactly. That's my note. My note was like, I really need this person to animate for every Disney product that's come out in the last, at least, well, it's probably more than 2 years now. Maybe it's closer to 3 or 4.
All the Disney Wish is coming out. That could be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, their passion project.
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
Sprinks.
I just found it.
Oh.
No, you can
That's
still
me.
do the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I figured, you got some more notes possibly, so.
I do. I think the silly hats bit was my favorite one without the cutback.
Without the beatdown.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite out of them all.
It was
just him walking up and then you're watching the Looney Channel.
Yeah, it was very like, I think it was that one that clued me in. I'm like, okay, these aren't actual commercials. I wasn't sure for.
Pretty cool if it was though.
I wasn't sure. I was like, okay. My notes were like, oh man, this guy's intentionally trying to get these rejected, kind of thing.
All right, I just put it in the chat. The camera setup.
Oh, very cool.
Oh.
I'm sure we can put that in the Instagram post.
Yeah, that's that was supposedly that was used on some Peanuts specials. No, I could not. That was sourced from Bitter Films, but they didn't even have any specific, anything to confirm that. But it's a Richardson camera, and apparently it was one of only like a handful that was left still functioning in the world, or at least in America. So that did all of the shorts up till his last 3 from Billy's Balloon, or from Rejected onwards.
Sorry. I'm so used to this that I've already got it ready to go in OBS. So it's going up in the pod.
Okay, look at this. So this isn't from Rejected. This is from the one we're going to be covering next. But just so you get an idea of kind of the setup, I guess. So, for any nerds out there, for these old animation cameras, there's a motor, so you can do frames and you can slow it down and do exposures and stuff. It's very, very. There's another picture of like the motor on the back, but I couldn't get that to be clear. So,
it's a pretty cool setup.
If you want, yeah, it's that was above I think it was above a tire place and below a carpet company.
Truly
so
working out in the field right there.
Yeah, and it was like apparently like 300 or 500 pounds or something ridiculous. But yeah, it was pretty cool. What did I have?
In terms of the ending and the crumpling paper, I'll touch on lighting. I gasp. I think they did a good job lighting the crinkles. Good contrast with the shadow, making them more pronounced.
Did you believe it?
If it was more top down, or it'd be kind of hard to see the wrinkles happening. Just enough to where the shadows aren't too stretched out and it's ugly looking. Just enough to make it sharp.
Yeah. I also tend to agree with that. The contrast, I think, really helped highlight, like, what was still a normal part of the world. Like, my image that comes into mind when how the lighting changed against the crinkles was the 3 silly hat people running away and them slowly getting kind of consumed by the crinkled papers.
Yeah.
Brutally murdered.
Do we have a favorite? I guess for the sake of because it's a comedy. Do you have a favorite skit from this?
Springs, are you gonna stick with the silly hat one without the cutback?
I mean, if I can do without the cutback, yes, but the cutback is included in it, so because the cutback to me really makes it over the top.
You know what's funny? I knew it. I knew that was gonna be something. I was watching it and I was like, I know that. I know it's the cut. The cut is what's gonna get him.
Speak so well.
At least for this, I knew. For my stuff, I know.
No, I'll probably actually just stick with that because the first half I think is better than any of the other ones.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the same with Springs in this one. Silly Hat for me, I think, was my favorite skit just because it's the simplicity of it. Like there's no one talking. There's no one like it's just entirely like visual. It's just a visual jokes. They're all in silly hats, and a guy just comes in a top hat, and it's not silly hat. It's just a top hat. And then everyone just slowly turns to look at him, and then eventually the smile on his face, just turns into a frown.
Though, to be fair, I guess if we're going with what we qualified as silly, technically, if everybody's in a silly hat, the one who's not in a silly hat would be silly.
It's up to the individual.
You're
right.
Much like your take on humor being subjective to person.
But the caveat, writer, put the caveat in there.
So the reaction to humor is subjective, but you can break down parts of jokes objectively.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do it that way. I just couldn't remember the actual wording.
No, it's fine. No, I got you covered. I've said it enough times now that I've pretty much memorized it. I feel like I have to
put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, I have to throw that caveat in every time it comes up. It's kind of my character thing.
He's picking on me. Help!
No. Oh, you've been quiet this whole time. It's been
a balloon.
All right,
Billy's balloon, actually.
Billy's
my
balloon,
favorite
the red one,
will be probably the tick one.
Like the tick, huh?
That's unexpected.
Yeah,
any reason why?
Tick nipples.
It didn't expect.
It was unexpected. Yeah, it was, caught me off guard. Everything else didn't really.
Everything else, I knew what was coming. I knew that anus was going to bleed.
I did. I saw the clouds. I saw it coming. Joke ruined. Not true.
I knew his eyeball was going to pop off and bleed every.
I knew that UFO was going to come out of the sky
and take that guy's eyeballs. He was going to walk into that yield sign. Why would you walk into a yield sign? You would walk into a stop sign. Sorry, I got a little animated there.
No worries.
Ooh. Speaking of my anus is bleeding, apparently a film historian said that was one of the most horrifying things she'd ever witnessed, and compared it to Nazi Germany or something.
Wow. I don't think that person has a spectrum, to be honest with you.
No, yeah.
I don't think they've seen enough TV
or
movies.
I don't think they've heard enough history. That's what that
That was a quote from Don himself, and he made it clear that he didn't remember exactly what she said, but I found it very funny. My favorite scene, I don't know. I'm against Don, and I think that My Spoon is Too Big is objectively very funny.
Whether he intended it or not, it's pretty good.
Maybe because he intended it not to be funny, it's so funny. Because of how stupid it is.
That's the extra layer of humor for you. Yeah.
And I have I'm biased. I have the T-shirt of it, so
that's fair.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else? I think we have a couple things, right? I don't want to rush anybody, but
I have something to point out. When at the end and things are breaking and the sky starts and the guy in the bunny ear starts running away, the sky is falling in line with him running. There's nothing ahead of him that's already fallen.
Good catch.
Yeah, he pretty much outruns everything until the end where he gets consumed by everything.
He's sort of trapped everything in between all the crinkles. Yeah.
Which is interesting, which kind of made him the main character.
Yeah, he is. He's
focused on
angry ticks fire out of my nipples.
Yeah, he's the main guy.
I do like, though, I think one of my favorite shots, it's not a skit, is the stick figures trying to break out of the paper. And during the chaotic finale. I don't know, there's just something very, they're only like three, they're like 3 dots, but there's so much emotion in there. It's really good.
That's fair.
Kudos, Mr. Hertzfeldt. If you ever watch this podcast, I would love to have him on the podcast. He's very funny. Someday. We're millionaires and we can afford him. Let's see if there's anything else I haven't already said. Oh, the music. You guys thought I forgot about the music. I spent all that time sourcing it. And The My Anus is Bleeding song is a Swedish Christmas song called...
Oh my god, it's a Christmas short.
Yeah. Nur Art det Jul Igen. And then the Johnson and Mills stuff. I couldn't find any definitive names, but most of them I classify under library and free music cues, also known as elevator music.
Fair enough.
I was able to find the original versions, but they didn't have any names or anything because they're just, incidental.
The music cues also, I want to add on real quickly on
Yeah.
the point, I think they're very comedically timed.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely
very
enjoyed
good.
them.
I think Mr. Hertzfeldt, Don, we'll call him,
The Don.
is the Don of animation. He's very good. He's not the greatest artist. I don't think anybody would. I think even he would say he's not that great. But I would defend. I think stick figures are pretty good. I think his real talent, though, in animation, is sound design and the queuing up stuff. I think all of his films have, no matter how small, are pretty well made in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the real strength of his stuff, is just picking the perfect music to go along with whatever's going on.
I think,
which, thankfully for him, happens to also be pretty cheap to source.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the strength of his music really shows in the next one. More so. Than
Oh
this
yeah,
one.
no,
I think it's great in this one, but I do think the next one is really the true strength of it. His ability to pick music.
Yeah, I think each one of his, which is what each one of his gradually gets more and more focused on that and kind of builds that. Don't think that was the last thing I had in my notes.
Sprints. I mean, you have a lot.
No, I'm good.
All right. Ratings then?
Yeah. Ratings. We will start with Sprinks.
Sweet. I want to give a kudos to Sinister, because this is the first for me. Out of everything we have covered on the pod up to this point, this was the hardest thing for me to rate. And I still did not necessarily have a definitive rating when we began recording. I had averaged ratings. So first off, my averaged ratings, because they're different now, my average ratings objectively was a 7, subjectively was a 4. The main thing for me with this one is if it was real or not that these shorts were being rejected. If he was actually submitting these, which goes into the whole the bleeding eyes situation, because I was unsure, and I was informed by Sinister, don't do any research, don't look anything up, so I stayed away from it. I was blind going into it. So I did not know if it was false to the story of the entire short, or if it was true that these were being rejected and it was just kind of a compiled together. Because to me, the story, if it was true, that's one of the most assholest things I can think of in terms of animation. That to get your project done, you had to submit things that they didn't want in order to compile them into a meaning of rejected for your own self-pleasure. That's mean and cruel. The fact, the other way of if it being false and these are made up, then it's the meaning behind it of like things get rejected so much that they're their own world, which goes to the end. And like, what better way to destroy those that have already been false than destruction and apocalyptic black hole situation? So that's how I saw the two, and I just had to come with an average, realizing that, or learning that this is not real. Family Learning Channel is not real. The Johnson and Mills Corporation is not real. These are just for the animation itself. Helps me, really helps the score. So subjectively knowing that those are not real things to get this craft done, it's a 6 subjectively. Objectively, a part I needed to know kind of was being rejected individual shorts of their own individuality to then compile all together for the end of being conjoined into one, of like the Family Learning Center falling over on the things that were in the Johnson ads, and like they're all in that one page world that Crimson touched on. If that was like an end goal to get to of the situation, but Sinister brought up that it wasn't, and that was only halfway through thinking about like just making little like, you know, little animations, and like halfway through it's like, oh, I can compile it all into one. So that was not the original ending, if any ending at all, for these, which I think hurts it, because then it's like using recycled old things for a new story rather than starting from the beginning, or coming up with that idea and starting from the beginning of like, oh, like reusing characters. It's like you can reuse the characters of what you've already made into like this whole new story, but being like, oh, I took what I've already done into it to be recycled into it to get to the ending is not that strong of a purpose to me, then, because it started off that way of being just recycled, or just actually having no purpose to an ending.
I don't mean to cut into your ratings there, because I know we usually don't do that. I would like to just clue in a little bit, clear a little air. It's the style of Hertzfeldt's work is he usually doesn't have an ending when he starts a project, so that way he's not locked into something when he wants to change it, because this film and any of his subsequent ones have changed drastically within production. So if he starts with an ending and he doesn't get there, it's much harder to form it. So it's not like he was like, I'm just going to make a bunch of crap and then I'm going to cycle it through. It's kind of like, okay, I'm starting here, we're working my way, and then you get the ending. Like, oh, I know where this needs to go to have a good finale.
Okay.
So it's not just
what you're saying is like
More
the beginning
fluid.
stuff, or the little sketches were not just like done, set on a shelf for a month, and then made another set on a shelf, and then he goes, oh, I can use these to get an ending.
No,
You're saying he started at the beginning of knowing what he was doing up to like the halfway point of, I guess, let's just say the Johnson Mills Corporation, and then came up with, oh, I know where I can take these.
Well, I don't know what like order these came out in, because this is not obviously the original order they were made in. But yeah, ostensibly, like the cartoons themselves were designed, and then gradually it was like, okay, well, this is just a compilation of shitty ideas or whatever. Like, that's fine, like that's funny, but it's not really meaningful. So then how do you make a meaning out of it? And then you gradually get to the ending that we have here.
But that thought channel was while he was already making it.
Yes, it wasn't like he was like, okay, I need to find an ending here or something. It was just like organically sourced to get to the end.
Okay, that does help then a bit. Okay, then in that case, my objective will be, it'll be a 6.5, but it could change, because I like the whole meaning of that then, of the whole purpose of the situation of what's happening, and the craft towards that. However, it's still, it feels a little, at least interpreted to me, feels a little tailored, because it's different than Billy's Balloon and the one we're about to do, because it has kind of cut off ends, like a short, and then that's it. But he put those all into one film.
Yeah, I don't really know where to. That help you out on that one. That's between you and your scale.
Yeah. So 6 subjective, 6.5 objective.
All right. Writer.
All right. This was the most straightforward one to me. I really appreciated the artistic messaging and stuff like that. There's not really much of a story to follow here up until the second half, where characters start repeating a little bit. But the story is the idea that like all these rejected cartoons are, slowly falling apart. And I'd argue the main character is probably Don himself, with all the notes he gives about the context of why things are starting to change. So I'd argue that everything matches his mental state. So he's probably my argument for the main character throughout this. Knowing that, the plot's pretty simple. You get text crawls in order to clue you in onto the mental state of the character. And then obviously the world building is with the colliding of all the things at the end. Relatively it takes place either quote unquote in the same universe, or it's, just a collashing of cartoons and stuff like that. So I think I'll give my subjective first. Subjective, this is loved it. This is I don't know if this is my favorite one of the three, but it's definitely up there. I would show this to people. This is an easy subjective 8 out of 10 for me. On the objective end, I think I'm at an 8. I think a lot of the messaging regarding artistic integrity is very, very strong. But I do think there's some things that could be tightened up to make it more impactful, though I do like the fluidity of the creative process that he has. But, what is pointed out is just a natural, I guess, facsimile of why it can feel so loose, I guess. So, 8 and 8 for me.
All right, and Crimson.
All right. So objectively, I felt about the same throughout. I really did like the ending, but it's not really enough to boost it further than what I gave Billy, which was a 6.5. I could acknowledge the attempts of humor. Not all of them made me laugh or anything, or mentally laugh. As I've stated in other podcasts, I don't really laugh out loud unless it's very special, like Before We Go. I think we watch that. Objectively, kind of difficult, because there is a through line through Don. I agree with your assessment of him being the main character. But these little shorts aren't really connected to much outside of his mental state of his integrity as it goes on. I like the addition of the left-handed segment to just show
The degradation.
the lack of care. Yeah, at that point.
I would like to add that Don Hertzfeldt has said that he wished he could animate always like that.
Oh, what's stopping him?
People like you, Crimson, who enjoy artistic merit.
You can do it. I do think, based off the ending, the blood guy and the blood should have been present, because pretty much everything else is, as you said, Sinister. Don't really know how that would come across, but with what we are conveyed, I feel like it sticks out as a missing element, especially that it's such a memorable moment through it, that it's resonated and stuck around through the internet more, I would imagine, than the rest of these segments, but I don't have anything to back that. So I'm also giving it an 8.5. I'm matching Billy, and it's pathetic, really. I kind of
You are pathetic.
I am quite pathetic. Yeah, 8.5.
You're making Sinister celebrate over here. This is the highest scores he's gotten so far. All right. Okay, I'm last. Oh my goodness! My heavens! What do I do?
Here comes the one rating, the very first one from Sinister.
I hate this. You guys like this too much. No, this was probably, I've seen, this is probably his most impactful thing he's made. There's one other of his feature length thing, which is 3 shorts put together later on, is also really, really good. And I think probably his magnum opus. But out of all of his that I've seen, this is probably my favorite of the standalone stuff, mostly because it's very, it's very, what would be a good word? Very approachable. It's very easily approachable. I think you can be like 12 and have fun with it, or you could be like 35 and have fun with it.
It certainly eases you. It certainly eases you into the derangement of it.
Yeah. Like, it's not gross out right from the beginning. It kind of builds to it, and and it's not, I think, gratuitous, but it's not to the point of just like, just making you sick. It's just supposed to be like absurd, kind of like, I think we had the same topic with Dead Alive or Brain Dead, aka. But it's just to a point where it's just humorous because it's just too much. So I like a lot. I will concede that there are a few things that maybe would have made it a little bit better that Crimson pointed out. But I think narratively, with the exception of some of his later ones, this is probably one of the strongest. With how loose it is and how you can kind of still find the through line throughout. There's definitely ones that are a bit more less open-ended. I am gonna give this a 9.
On to the last one.
Yeah, hopefully we have time. My goodness.
Yeah,
I
hopefully.
didn't realize we're gonna
Plenty
spend
of
an
time.
hour. And then we're an hour on Billy. Oh, you think so? Do you? My pamphlet says otherwise. Thank you very much.
What's your
Future-telling
time look like,
pamphlet.
Sinister?
My pamphlets. All right. Oh, we got this. We can do it.
All right.
I'll breeze right through. All right. Last but not least, The Meaning of Life. Not to be confused with the Monty Python film, which we'll cover at a later date, I'm sure. 35 millimeter, 12 minutes and 38 seconds.
It's so long.
Yeah, it's the longest one he'd made that up to that point. Production began. I'm assuaged. I'm getting rid of the history. I don't think any of us have any history besides me on this one. So
yeah,
I can.
I think
Yeah.
so. I
Okay.
feel like this is definitely one I've like been recommended before,
Yeah.
but I never watched.
Yeah, it's definitely one that gets recommended a lot. Production began the summer of 2000, but original ideas were conceived as early as 1997 to 1998. So, Billy's Balloon era. Almost 3 years were required to complete its design and animation. Many of the complicated sequences demanded several months of work to just produce a few seconds worth of animation.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Over 60 actors recorded vocal performances for over 150 characters. And the intense crowd scenes in the beginning and end of the film took almost 2 years to animate.
Wow.
Holy
I
crap!
didn't realize there were that many voice actors involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could tell they're very individualized voices, and it definitely pays off.
My favorites being "Give Me Your Money" and "Boy, Do I Like Fish Sticks. I could eat them all day long." Some of my favorites. Over 45 minutes of footage was shot before being edited down to the final runtime.
Interesting. I'm curious as to what the 45 minutes would have looked like.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't imagine you ever will, but this is...
No, yeah. And the music are selected works from Tchaikovsky. I did not say that correctly.
Close enough.
Yeah, Tchaikovsky. For you music nerds out there, it's Piano Concerto No. 1, the Nutcracker Suite, 8 pieces from the Seasons, Opus 37, Symphony No. 6, Opus 74 in B minor, and the Romeo and Juliet Overture.
Oh. Well, maybe. I thought I caught Waltz with the Flowers in there. But...
That was probably part of the Seasons.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Jump in with Crimson.
Oh my god. You know what I love? I love all the people.
Is that your favorite part of the movie?
No.
No,
I just liked how I perceived the meaning of life was in here. I saw it very nihilistically. I don't know if that was the intent in it or not.
No.
I doubt it, but I enjoyed the idea of this being like a YouTube video, even though it's meant to be more than that. It's an actual film. But the idea of it being on YouTube and then a bunch of voices just talking and talking about what the work is, what we're doing now, all becoming gobbledygook. It really means nothing because we'll all die. And someone else will just come back and talk more.
Spoilers about
Fuck.
life. Everyone you
Meaning
know
of-
and love will
yeah.
die one day.
Yeah.
Except me. I'll never die.
Yeah,
That's how it
Crimson will
works.
live forever. He's the embodiment of cynicism.
His spite will keep him alive.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can sort of agree with that. I definitely saw the cynicism take. I think my take on it is kind of similar, but I guess since we're on the subject, may as well give like what you derived as the meaning of life from this. Um, for me, the message was, like life's meaning is what you give it while you're here. Pretty much, is what I took away from it.
I kind of like my takeaway from it was like the meaning of life is just like asking what the meaning of life is. Like that, because if you can ask what the meaning of life is,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of similar to what you were saying, basically.
Yeah, like I said, like in your, like that's part of the steps. Like you have to define your meaning of life, because that's kind of what the point of it is, I guess. At least that's
Isn't
what
it
I
just isn't it just so amazing to be anything at all, really?
got. Considering how the universe works, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Sprinks.
Did you have a yeah? What are your theories about the meaning of life from this?
That's a good question. I took it that no matter how far time passes, that the question will continually be asked and no defined answer will be coming of it, but the closest one can take is by spending a moment of time gazing up at the vast universal cosmos. That's the best meaning I got out of this.
Oh. For the crowd scenes in general, at certain points in the crowds, there are upwards of 50 characters interacting in full motion at once. It generally took about 20 to 30 minutes to pencil all the individual characters into a single frame, and then an additional 15 minutes to carefully ink them.
Oh man, and then you're essentially doing that over and over again.
Oh yeah, day in, day out. That is Don right now, actually, while we're doing this podcast, Don Hertzfeldt is probably animating his next thing right now. That's all he does all day long, and then do interviews. There's a really good documentary focusing on this one, the specific short film out there on YouTube called Watching Grass Grow, and it is essentially the entire production time-lapsed into 12 minutes. So about 3 years worth of work amounted to about 12 minutes of a video.
Wow.
No,
This is
check that out.
animation.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially when you're doing it one by one.
Every time I hear the long animation times it actually takes, I'm still blown away. Even though I objectively can comprehend and know that that's always the case, it's still
Like I know like a lot of people tend to shit on like digital animation or whatever, but like they're still doing it by hand. Like I mean, it's a little bit faster because you have access to assets and things, but you're still having to draw it all. Like it's not like it's monumentally easier than it used to be.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It gets a bad rap for no reason usually.
Mm-hmm. By the end of 2002, the entire finished crowd sequence amounted to a relatively modestly sized but frightening, irreplaceable stack of papers that was stored in a fireproof safe. At one point near the sequence completion, it was considered perfectly logical to store the fireproof safe inside of a larger fireproof safe.
I don't blame them for that caution.
Yeah. Don has described the unexpectedly long process of animating this film as like sketching a novel into a rock one letter at a time with your fingernails.
Wow. But fair enough.
Appropriate.
Yeah. He did take a 9-month break in between the production of the film to work on the animation show, if anybody in the audience is familiar with that, which was him, Mike Judge, and another person, famous for Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, which kind of helped him test out a lot of the effects we see later in the film.
Oh yeah, the star maps and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Yeah.
One detail I really like was when we start visiting other worlds, the clouds change. Like the color changes for like this. It implies the change in setting.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I have a little fun fact for that. I don't have it written down, but this actually all takes place on Earth.
Really?
Yes.
So I guess Sprinks' theory would be more correct then, potentially. With that idea, the concept of always being on Earth, then that would be like...
I saw it as always being on Earth because there's a point where it pulls away from humans on Earth, and then it cuts back to the same planet.
Which arguably is probably my favorite one of my favorite shots in the whole film. I literally I have the thing in front of me telling me how he did it, and I don't understand how he did it. It's mind-boggling. Where do I have it? Yeah.
Well, on that note, Ryder, I did see the clouds change as well, and I saw that could have been a generational change in adapted gases or chemicals in the atmosphere.
Yeah. I mean, with the knowledge that it's supposed to all take place on Earth, it's definitely I definitely think it's definitely about the time thing that you brought up earlier then. While I like my interpretation of it, yours is more foundationally in the sense of like, yeah, it's like, time will pass constantly and the meaning of life will always be asked.
Yeah. No, I too agree. I did question it to be aliens. The part that cemented it for me, though, was the part where it's going through one evolution and is more of a smooth, like fast cut transition going into the next shape.
Yeah, that to me, that's why I think your theory holds credence, because that to me from the beginning, I have notes for that. It reminds me of the famous animation of evolution going from like a some cell, and then eventually going through all the forms of life until you get to the one that we are through all the evolutionary steps. It's a very famous animation. That's what I got. Yeah.
Yeah, that's somewhat how this starts, of kind of making I don't even know what to call it, a little creature thing to evolve into human.
Yeah. It's a very...
That's all we are. We're just a little creature thing evolved into a human, really.
Well, it wasn't like
I'm being honest. Yeah,
or...
It was, what do they call them? I don't remember.
I don't know. It could even be played in the case of that being millions and millions upon years of evolution itself to get to man.
Yeah, I mean,
and obviously
entire evolution of man was in like 15 seconds. There is pretty, pretty incredible if you think about it.
Yeah, like that shows that at the beginning, but the thing at the end where we're just going from creature to creature to creature without necessarily transitioning from different clouds, different skies, it's just focused on the creature evolving. That's kind of, like I said, it really drew me back to it because I was a huge fan of Cosmos from Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and
it is kind of like that.
And there is an animation in there that at least I consider to be that reminded me of sharply of that. So I think they achieved their goal on that front. If that was the goal of 1,000 evolutions in a second, kind of thing.
Yeah, apparently like the length and like the scope of the quote unquote like animal sequence or the alien sequence expanded far beyond like the original conception, eventually rivaling the human crowd in difficulty. I kind of like that with Don. He just always makes things more difficult for himself. Never takes the L. As the months pressed on, animal sequences were often thrown out or entirely reworked simply because the scenes developing around them were being animated better as Don kept learning new tricks. Which is...
God damn it. See, this is something I actually can relate to, because I'm a much better writer, shockingly, now than when I was when I first started. And you can definitely see the difference in quality when it comes to my story, especially the ones that are continuous. Like I can get the reason my fantasy sort of gets away with it is because I'm publishing them in short stories, so they have a degree of separation. But for my fan fiction, they don't have a degree of separation. They're all published under the same name and stuff like that, the updates. So I actually relate to that a lot.
Yeah. It's the one sucky thing about that. If you're working nonstop, some of the stuff eventually will be better because you're just working on it all the time, and you got to get really. damn it, I just spent like a month working on it and I gotta throw it away because it just doesn't match what I was already doing.
Yeah, I have a college story actually that I told my classmates that there was a time where I reached a point in a book where I threw out 150 pages just because I didn't think it was working, and they all stared at me like I was mad. I'm like, I would have given up. I'm like, well, I guess, but I'm stubborn. So I threw those 150 pages out. They're saved, but I'm not using them anymore.
Yeah. For posterity.
Yeah, exactly.
The sound effects, little fun fact, in the time-lapse sequences are a combination of hummingbird wings and a noise Don made with his mouth.
That's
back to the
fair enough.
Foley days. See, the long outer space shot that opens the second act of this film took many months to design, animate, and watercolor, followed by over 2 weeks of careful camera work. Apparently, to date, their most expensive and difficult to photograph sequence by far. The uncut 45-second shot is made up of over 100 separate animated elements, each of them individually requiring the single film strip to be backwound in the camera and carefully rephotographed over and over again. Given this overwhelming load of multiple exposures, if Don had made a single mistake behind the camera or in his math, the negative would be ruined and the process would had to start all over again.
Talk about planning your shots out months in advance.
Oh, God. Brutal. Oh. But yeah. Probably, I think, visually, it's the best animated film I think he's made. Or at least one of that I've seen. And I haven't seen all of them yet. But.
Of the other two that I've seen, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, there's actually color in this one other than just blood red and a yellow banana,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think one of my favorite things in this one it's in a lot of his later stuff too, and he kind of starts in this one is the color kind of shadowing, like the animation, like there's like the pink and
it's not a solid white. It's got a gradient.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's weird because I've never really seen that in any other kind of like hand drawn, like practical hand drawn stuff. Not like I've definitely seen it in like computer animated stuff, and I'm in awe because I don't really understand exposures on in film and everything, so it's very, very cool.
And you and I took film class together and photo class together.
But we didn't. I do know a little bit about exposure from the film photo class.
Yeah,
but
we are not at this level.
No, this is like, this is like you worked on film for like 10 years or something, and you know all the tricks, but and then for perfecting the outer space scenes from scratch, all of them were handcrafted shots. Began by transforming Don's effects animations in star fields, as well as some charcoal artwork for the black of space, into line negatives. These pieces were then backlit, often layered with plastic sheets to create diffusions, tinted, and then cobbled together in camera through multiple exposure, using any means necessary to get the right effect on film. One moving field was mounted on a diagonal plane of glass to create depth. Other elements were carefully captured by actually rotating star fields by hand with the camera running above. So,
okay. That's an issue.
No slouch.
No, definitely not.
Now, all in all, very cool. But I think my favorite scene, without the effects stuff, I love the effects stuff. It's very cool. But it's very telling that I think like my favorite scene in this is the younger and the older alien-looking thing having a conversation that I cannot understand, but I do understand.
Yep, I was going to bring that up as one of my points. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go. I don't want to steal your thunder. I've watched this like 50 times. You can.
Well, it's pretty much conveying the same thing you're saying, where you can't understand anything except the little one says meaning of life at some point. And from there, you can figure out what their back and forth are, even though it's just nonsense gibberish, alien speak. And I don't know, I think that was very well done, and it slows down everything just for this moment, because everything's been nonstop. The music has been keeping everything with good pace. I think the music's the best part of this animation for me personally. Really amplifies everything that's going on. And just the slow down for this introspective talk of the meaning of life, the whole point of the short, I really like.
I think we can all kind of relate to having a philosophical conversation with maybe an older person, maybe, just a peer, and then just not really not playing into it, but like not giving maybe the answer that we're imagining or something, because I feel like the question of what is the meaning of life is a very big question. Multiple answers, multiple things. And you kind of get a sense that the older alien, figure is just sort of maybe giving a very broad definition of how there is no real meaning of life, or there's no real, it's like we die, we come back, we die, we come back, You
can tell he's very cynical.
Yeah. Like there's a, meaning of life, that kind of, just, what life, it's all just here. It's this is the meaning of life, just existing. And it's kind of like, well, maybe there's more. Maybe there's a existing. Who knows? Well, we may never know.
But the government knows.
The government, the military knows.
I'll touch on the conversation since we're on it. It's definitely one of my favorite sequences as well, because you can also imprint on whatever meaning on that conversation that you want, but you still get the gist of it, because we were all children once that asked those sorts of big questions, whether or not we were expecting a real answer. I always
big questions like, why is the milkman going in the house with mommy? Those are some big questions.
I have a distinctive memory of seeing the moon during the day, and I just remember asking my mother of whether the moon ever ends, and I never, it was just a simplistic.
Yeah, never really got an answer. Yeah,
never got an answer, but it was such a simplistic question that that my parents didn't know how to answer either, because it's like, I didn't fully understand. They didn't fully understand what I was asking at the time. When I was asking, it was like, does like the cycle of the moon ever end? Like, does it ever just stop? And obviously, kind of one of the reasons I ended up falling towards science a little bit is because I like answering those kinds of questions. But it was one of those questions that didn't get answered because I didn't understand or comprehend their answer, and I don't think they fully understood my question either. So had that element of like simplistic childlike question. Like, of course a child would ask what the meaning of life is, because they're searching for meaning, they're searching for purpose. That's kind of a part of growing up. It was very nice. I quite liked it.
Springs, do you have any breakdown for this? This is kind of the only
as much as the other two.
Speaking. Not as much as the other. Okay.
No. I really like, though, that the beginning, because to me this was very evolution of everything, of the meaning of life in this animation. I like that the beginning starts with the titles over flickering fire, because that's kind of documented as like one of the first inventions to man. So I liked how that's how they started. And it's also almost in a way how they ended. The ending credits aren't exactly the same. The beginning I saw more of like flickering flame. The ending looked more like just scratch marks in the dark, because it was centered where the light was coming from. So I think the ending is more just like the unknown. So I like the somewhat of bookend of the connecting of what those two mean in the essence of time throughout.
To quote, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, to quote Cortana from Halo spin-off series, life will always yield few answers, but it will always more than willing to confront you with new questions.
Yeah. The part of I listed them as the child and the parent, but when they're discussing and the word that can be heard is meaning of life is like the only understood English word, was the question, because to me that is a phrase that has been passed down generation after generation from ancestors to this current point in the evolutionary timeline. Is that question then the meaning of life popularized in English terms? Because it's an English word. It's not said in French or German or anything else.
Yes, that's the way you'd have to read it. We still have sayings that are in like ancient Latin, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
language
Vinny
does.
Vici.
Yeah, they do persist through time, and I guess in this instance, the English version moved on. I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely
Just curious
possible.
on that.
Language is a very, very interesting beast. In of itself, and the study of etymology is crazy to think about with how much is lost and how much is managed to be retained, you know?
Yeah. And then another thing I have is it it could have been a joke or like a little like tongue in cheek towards it, but when it like quickly goes through the humans of like in their walk cycle to the dead on the floor, and then it does it the second time and a man is just walking by, is that supposed to be like the last man on Earth?
Well, I think that was just. Oh.
first-
I didn't really view it that way. More like a, I guess, introspective look at what it really means to be human. Right? It doesn't really mean much because life will move on. Obviously, we get these further generations of alien-like creatures.
Beings.
Yeah, beings. The point that this is Earth, I don't like now that was confirmed.
Yeah.
Because I was with Ryder.
I like the
sky
ambiguity of it.
changing fit the planets, and
Yeah.
I think one of the problems I now have because it's Earth is when we zoom out of the planet, it doesn't look like Earth, which is kind of disappointing because everything else is so meticulously well done everywhere in this, but making Earth not look like Earth, I've found to be odd, and now that's been confirmed to be Earth. So I think that's probably the only nick I have towards the animation is it failed to portray it as Earth. But back to the lone guy thing, I think it's more symbolic than literal that he's the last man on Earth, human on Earth.
Don't worry, Crimson. I'll color it in for you. I'll color
in
Earth
Earth?
for you. I'll color in Earth for you.
Oh.
Appropriately, so it'll be
Okay.
blue and
I thought you were
green.
segueing that into.
No, the colors wasn't the issue. It was the shape of the continents. It didn't look anything like Earth.
Yeah, I mean, to be really uncomfortable.
The guy is not a geography dude.
Yeah, to be really uncomfortable for a second, the way I took that, Springs, in a more literal sense, was that everywhere you walk on the planet, you're walking over something's grave, just by the innate value of how life works.
Oh yeah, that's a good interpretation.
Walking on what was.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And I mean, obviously, this is a little bit cynical of a movie, but I do think we all kind of just we do kind of speak in slogans. We do, I think in our basic, instinct. And if you look at like YouTube comments or something like that too, it's kind of the same sort of thing. I don't think it's as obvious as this movie puts it forward as, but it was something I found kind of funny that nowadays I feel like it's more true than it probably was back then. Everything's just like down to sound bites.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, not sure I agree with the YouTube part. But yeah, everyone has their catchphrase or.
Well, he means more than just the noise of existence. Like he's using YouTube comments. He's using YouTube comments, right? Sinister, I assume.
Yeah, like it's just like
as a whole.
Everything's down to. I mispronounced it when I said slogans because that meant catchphrases. No, I meant like sound bites. Like everything's just down to like minute things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why TikTok's exploded in that sense of like it's such short little things because no one has the time to absorb anything of greater length anymore.
Don't talk
Ryder,
bad about our
Ryder, thank you
platforms.
so much. Going right into we have a TikTok if you're interested.
Yeah.
Sure.
we post things on there.
But yeah, no, like I said, I assume that it's just what you mean, Sinister, was the noise of existence is why everything is so clouded and stuff like that. Because that's definitely a bit of what I got from this as well. Just especially with people talking over each other.
Yeah.
I
I have
like to
one
point out-
less. Oh, you go. You go.
Okay, I think the smartest human depicted in this is the man walking by saying those stars are billions of years old.
Those stars.
Because he connects to the child way down the line that's just looking at the stars.
Yeah, I would agree
It
with
could
that.
be his descendant.
For all we know.
And I
It could
think
be him as a child.
And I like the feeling of
Exactly.
how much it impacts when the dad, or I guess the parent, walks away and the kid's looking at the stars, and then it cuts to the stars and there's no music. There's no audio at all. And then it plays after the fact. I like that break of silence.
Mm-hmm.
The slow transition of just like... Because I think the ending is definitely meant to make you feel insignificant. Or make,
if you didn't already.
If you didn't already, it implies the insignificance of it. Like the sheer luck.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen like what in the span of from humanity dying out, like 70 different iterations
the
of
sheer
evolution.
luck or divine intervention, I guess. It depends on your belief.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where I think the ending with the silence was very, very impactful and meaningful because it managed to press that point so well.
You can say a lot with a little.
Yeah.
And you can do more with less. There's some slogans for you. I have one last little thing, because Crimson brought up earlier the music was his favorite part. The piano concerto that plays in the beginning was always the peace in mind to be the meaning of life's theme. And the mid-film trip from Earth and back was specifically animated to a key selection from the Nutcracker Suite.
Oh, Tchaikovsky, yeah.
Tchaikovsky, yeah. And the rest of life's lush Tchaikovsky soundtrack, however, was remixed and gradually reshaped together entirely during editing, well after animation and photography were already largely finished. So only those two were done beforehand, or keyed in beforehand. And with that, I don't have anything else, really.
I guess my last piece, I commend the uniqueness of these creatures. They all are quite unique in the animation, the look, the sound effects. I thought they kind of felt living a little bit there.
Yeah. A grade creature design for sure.
But they stick to the development of human, or from human. So I applaud it for that as well.
Well, I guess we don't really know that. We don't see them from human turn into that. They could be from crabs, I guess.
It could be from another creature that evolved on Earth, if it's still on Earth. So it doesn't necessarily mean human.
That idea, fascinating. I don't agree with.
Ooh, putting the foot down.
Yeah,
I mean we don't see human turn into alien. I keep calling them aliens. Creatures.
Oh, the alien creatures.
But we see creature turn into human.
Do we?
Yeah, at the very beginning. I pointed out it's not like a fish or an ape. It's like a head, like with one arm crawling, and then keeps going. It's like from before to the present of human, and then further point.
Well, I mean, yeah, we all started like fish.
I assume that I legit assumed that was just parody off of Evolutionary.
Okay, I think the fact that we never see a single other animal, that it's all human only of the evolutionary breed that it's depicting.
Fair enough. To each their own.
I guess
this is very open-ended production.
Yeah, it's true. I guess that's it for me as well. I don't have much in the way of notes. I got all my big points out.
Anything?
No, I'm good. I mean, yeah, it reminded me of Fantasia with the music choice to like still look. I don't know if this would have been better though if it was music only without vocals. I'm unsure about that.
I think the crowd scenes really wouldn't have played quite as well. I agree. All right, well, that is it then. We will now go on to rating, and I'm going to randomly pick myself to go first. Oh boy.
How random.
I know, how random. I'm not planned this at all. This is probably visually, like I said earlier, this is probably my favorite of Don Hertzfeldt stuff. It's definitely the most out there. He's got some other stuff that he does later on that's visually striking as well, but it's not quite as grandiose as this one is. This one has a lot of scope, and especially given if you watched Billy's Balloon, Rejected, and then this, you would. I still think you really wouldn't see the evolution very much. It would be very hard to tell they were made by the same person, other than they're all stick figure based. So this is definitely a more mature animator at work here than I think the two previous ones. It is probably the loosest story, I think, overall, but that helped Monty Python a bit too, so who am I to judge? But it is quite amazing that all of this can be kind of just summarized in about a minute long, very slight end of two creatures talking together in a language we cannot understand, but we do understand innately in ourselves. And it's all what this movie is building to, with its lush, very well remixed and put together soundtrack. Hertzfeldt and classical music go together like fine wine and cheese. Very, very well put together. I have heard a lot of people say this is like the closest thing to an animated 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I've also heard people call it boring. So, we got some good middle ground there.
Well.
Yeah. So I think this is on par for me. It's not as funny. It's not quite as strong story-wise as Rejected. It's animated much, much better, and there's a lot more tricks involved. Not to say the tricks are everything. Tricks aren't everything. But they are very, very impressive in this one. And with that, I feel comfortable giving this a. You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give this a 10. Boom.
A 10.
First 10 on the podcast, baby.
That's not true. But first 10 out of Sinister on the podcast. That's true.
Who gave it 10 before?
Crimson.
I did.
National Treasure.
You
gave a
little
subjective 10.
snitch.
Stole your thunder.
Well, whatever.
Oh, it's still there.
First 10 out of you.
That is still very
something.
impactful.
Yeah.
Well, it took away all my momentum, so I'm upset now. All right. Who's next? All right. Well, I will go. Whoever's next is next, and I will talk to you guys later.
All right.
All right, Sinister. Thanks
Bye,
for,
Sinister.
Bye, Sinister.
Bye.
Shorts.
And then there were 3.
There were. Should we just go down the line from Sinister then?
So I'm next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So out of the 3, this one was my favorite. Subjectively, I give it a 6.5. To me, the music really helped with it, because I guess it's a little nostalgic for me because of Nutcracker, but it gave me that Fantasia feeling, and it impacted me a little more. I don't think it's as well done as Fantasia projects, but I do really like it in that regard. So 6.5. Objectively, also out of these, this was the easiest one for me to just come up with a score. I didn't really have to sit long and think about it. Like Rejected took me a very long time. This one was pretty easy. Objectively, I give this an 8.5. The message really gets across very well. I like the creative approaches in the evolution of how it looks, like Crimson pointed out. I think the music fits very nicely. I like the breaks where the music is and isn't. I'm still like 50-50 whether or not it's better with or without the vocals, but then again, it takes away the child and parent conversation, and then all the human just yap, the yada 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 situation that occurs. I think everything of the color, I like how the color is very bland of human. It's just black and white with dark clouds, and then it pulls out and shows a lot of color in space, and then when it goes back to the evolution, then we have color in the background in the clouds, and it's almost like a whole new, I mean, it came across to both of you, a whole new world, and just like alien and different. And I like that it shows not even just the visual and time. It's some way to incorporate the visual of time in the world chain as well than just the creatures, because the creatures are still just penciled. They're not filled in with colored. So I do like that as well. I like the bookend of like the start to end being that black with the like scratchy. Well, the end is like that scratchy looking void, and the beginning is the flickering flame, but they're both in black and white with movement. I really like that. I don't think we ever touched on the beginning of the body being withered away and falling down rather than being lifted up in the light. I think that was an interesting approach to a start. Yeah, 8.5.
All right, I'll go next, and I'll do my best to keep it, I guess, somewhat brief. I also really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it just quite a bit, really. This is also one I intend to rewatch and stuff like that, because this was, I don't know, it's very, very simply meaningful. I don't know how best to describe it other than that. I think I'm at 8.5 with this one. I've seen like the simplicity of it done better, but rarely, pretty much. And objectively, like I said, I think it accomplishes the goal. Even if we debated over like what was actually going on and stuff like that, but I still think the point of what's being conveyed gets across, and that's really what I have to base a lot of this off of. So 9 objective for me.
Okay, that makes me. So I'll go subjective again. This is also my favorite of the 3. I'm giving it a 7. It's very interesting because this doesn't have a plot. It has a message it wants, and it's laying it out in front of you, but there's no like chronological progression other than the evolution of what is now known as Earth. But there's no characters that we follow. There's no event that has an endpoint. It's just event after event after event, and it doesn't really lead anywhere, which is interesting. And I think it works. I brought up the music that I really liked. The sky changing with the creatures is an interesting decision, considering it is Earth, because it seemed very clear to me that it was different planets, but that got shot down. So I don't know if that's just me being dumb or if that wasn't conveyed properly, but I will not factor that into my objective since I do not know which one that is. My objective is going to be a 9, because the only thing I can say objectively flawed with it that I caught was the drawing of Earth. And that's pretty much it. So, yeah, 9. I'm giving it a 9.
All right. Well, shall I read us out then, gentlemen?
I think so.
That was Sinister Shorts, everybody. And that's
It's briefs.
Yeah, and that's what the rest of the season is going to be. So you have all that to look forward to. Not Sinister Shorts, but everyone's doing shorts this season. All right. Thank you for listening, whether it be on Spotify, Anchor, Amazon, Castbox, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Samsung. And if you're on the visual side of things, be it Rumble or YouTube, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe everywhere. Tell us how much you hate our opinions and how much you love them. As always, I have been a Geeky Writer.
I'm Crimson Maroon.
We had a Sinister Boy, like real close, and I'm Springs.
And we will catch you next time. Later, everybody.
Bye.
Toodaloo.